I know. I said in my last video it'd be a couple of days, and then it was over a week until I uploaded. But this book took me a hot minute. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, I'm Blaine Christopher, and this is Blaine's Book Club. I'm a little sick, so I sound like this now. It's either really sexy to you or gross and mucusy. Hopefully, you like it. This is the first video of a new series that I'm starting on my channel. Name to be determined. Maybe we can figure that out together. But the gist is, in this series, I want to read your favorite 5-star books. You being a subscriber, a close friend, internet friend, family member, a perfect stranger. I don't care. I want to read your favorite books. This week, I read The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This book is one of my friends Liz and Megan's favorite 5-star reads. Liz specifically asked me on multiple occasions, when am I going to read this damn book and talk about it? And Liz, the time is now. This book is very popular, especially right now, I've discovered on Book Talk, because it's fall and this book is on everyone's autumn recommendations. But now that I'm thinking about it, the algorithm could just be algorithming. The Secret History was published in 1992 to critical acclaim, and it's widely regarded as a modern classic. A classic stands the test of time, and I know 1992 isn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things, but I think this book will definitely still resonate with people way into the future. I think they'll be eating this book up, just like my cat, who ate the edge of the book. I didn't even know he was into that shit. A little freak. Okay, so The Secret History. What is it about? Well, I'm glad you asked. The Secret History is about an exclusive group of students at an elite fictional university called Hamden College. They are in the school's classics program, and they push philosophical ideas to the extreme and end up having to cover their tracks. Our narrator is Richard, an academic from a small town in California who came from very humble beginnings. He escapes this life he no longer wants in this small town of California and enters an elite university on the East Coast, being accepted on scholarship. So he's talking to his academic advisor at the school, and he mentions that he wants to take Greek and continue his Greek studies. And his advisor is like, oh, no, that class is super exclusive and you're not on the list, honey. So after hearing about this group's exclusivity, Richard is like, okay, I'm obsessed. And he starts observing this small clique of students. We have Henry, big, tall, a bit scary, very stoic, and by far the most intellectual. He's definitely the leader of the group. And then we have Bunny. He is described as sloppy and rosy-cheeked and loud and honking. Then there's Francis, our mean fashion twink. He's always dressing immaculately in these old-timey suits and ties. I love how the author tells us he's gay by Richard saying, further inquiries elicited suspicion from male acquaintances who wondered at my interest in such a person. And you're like, oh, because he's gay, right? And then there's the twins, Camilla and Charles. They are described as having a dark sophistication, but they like to wear pale clothes instead of black. And they are very, very close. Richard describes this clique as wildly unapproachable, and he wants in. He finesses an interview with the Greek professor, Julian Morrow, who explains to him that he would not only be teaching him Greek, but would also be teaching all of his courses throughout college. The tea is, Julian is a very wealthy man, and he donates his entire paycheck to the school, but keeps $1 for tax purposes. So basically, the university lets him do whatever the fuck he wants. So he curates the curriculum for these students' entire college experience. And that's giving, what? Right, a cult, which is so funny because in the beginning of the book, Richard said that if he stayed in that town in California that he ran away from, he would have ended up in a cult. Well, guess what, my guy? You ended up in a cult anyway. But it's so funny because he doesn't see that because he has rose-colored glasses on for all of this. All right, everything I'm gonna say from here on out in this video is gonna be littered with spoilers. So if you haven't read this book yet or don't want spoilers, kindly go away and come back when you're ready. Ah, the beauty of the internet world. I will always exist in this digital timeline. Scary. Okay, so you're staying. Don't say I didn't warn you. Also, my ideas are going to be all over the place. I'm not going to give a bunch of context to my reactions. I'm just going to kind of throw them at you. Henry would roll over in his grave. Told you, spoilers. I loved this book. I loved spending time with these characters. I loved the dark academia vibes. I wish I had discovered this book in high school at the peak of my Tumblr days, because I would have had a field day with this book on Tumblr, I'm telling you right now. So yes, loved it. But there were moments of the book that really dragged for me, and it has me wondering why. I'm wondering if the prologue does this book a disservice. We find out that Bunny is killed in the prologue, and the only confirmed character we have from that scene is Henry, because it was his idea. So I had all these theories. I thought maybe there would be more people at the scene outside of the assumed group to be there. And that the narrator could possibly be someone else other than Richard in the prologue, because Richard doesn't introduce himself until after the prologue. But none of this happened, and it was quite clear that wasn't going to happen before we caught up to that scene and the timeline. So I'm not really feeling the suspense or any kind of payoff, really, which really has parts of book one dragging for me, because you're kind of like, can we just get to the murder and get that over with? Even with the reveal of the first murder, like of the farmer, you're not too shook because you know that there's going to be a murder in this book. And so I didn't feel that shock along with Richard that I would have liked to when that part was revealed, you know? In my notes, I wrote, Bunny is a greedy little bitch monster. Like, him being so selfish and using these people and being homophobic and sexist. And this monster, I feel like his death would have been so much more satisfying had we not known about it from the very beginning. And yes, we have to remember that Richard is an unreliable narrator, so there are theories that Bunny actually wasn't that bad, or as bad as he was described, and Richard just described him like that to justify the murder. But I don't know if I love that theory, because I feel like that theory would stand more if Henry was narrating the book, for example. I don't really see why Richard would need to justify the murder when it wasn't his idea. Yes, there's that guilt of being a part of the plan, but I don't know. I don't think anybody deserves death IRL. This is a fictional character, and I was ready for Bunny to die. And I believe that Bunny was a bad person, because otherwise, why would all of this happen? Maybe there's something I'm not getting. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Going through my notes, I love all of the foreshadowing in this book. When describing the twins, Richard said at first he thought they were dating, but then realized they were related. They're fucking incest. And then, of course, also when Bunny accused Camilla of sleeping with him as well is a good foreshadow. But this was at like the very beginning. And honestly, can we talk about how Camilla is a victim? I think we so badly want to be like, no, she was in her power. Like, she was manipulating these men. She was the deer they were chasing in the forest. They were hunting her. The men were literally hunting her. Sexually, question mark, as well. She didn't talk for days after. I don't know, it just feels so sus. And yeah, she's fucking her brother by choice, allegedly. But when Charles sloppily kisses her and then she breaks the kiss by going to make coffee, Richard notices that she's making it with sugar, which that's not how she normally takes her coffee. So whether or not that was Camilla being like, stop kissing me, let me go to my coffee, we can't have Richard knowing our secret, or if that was, I'm gonna stop this before it gets into like abusive territory. I guess that can be up for interpretation, but it seems like she's constantly taken advantage of by the men in this group. Even when it's revealed that Charles is violent against her, and so she's staying with Henry to feel protected, and that he's protecting her, there's still this level of like, it almost feels like he has this ownership over her. I don't know, it feels like if Camilla was going to be some kind of like master manipulator, Donna Tartt would have given us a lot more information about her. She was the least developed character, and I feel like that was on purpose obviously, because it's in Richard's perspective, and that may just be Richard focusing on her looks or whatever in the narration, but I feel like the hints of her reality outside his perception of her was still giving victim. Yeah, they all committed this murder. There's a certain level of evil in them, so maybe that's a hot take that I think she's a victim, but those are my thoughts. I'm obsessed with how we start off in this like very curated, aesthetic forward world. And then as the book progresses, it unravels. It pulls back this mask of grandeur or very curated aesthetic and shows these people's mediocrity. They start out being these untouchable, elitist, very stylized academics in Richard's eyes and from outside perspectives. And then in book 2, we get a closer look at these people. Camilla ends up taking care of her grandparent and has no friends. Charles ends up as an alcoholic, off-grid, having an affair. Francis is married to a woman, living an unhappy life with a beard. Henry, dead. They put all of this work into the ideology of this ancient world that they no longer had the energy for their current one. They had these aspirations to walk with these ancient gods, and they ended up living very mundane lives. I think it's interesting that Richard works for the psychology department. I think it's interesting that Richard works for the psychology department at school. In between semesters, he's working for the psychology office, and he's living in these horrible conditions, and it's very raw and brutal, but real. And then when he's in class with Julian's philosophical teachings, there's this escape, right? There's this escape to ancient worlds, an escape from the reality of Richard's world outside of school. There was like this whole thing with Julian, the classics professor, who focuses a lot on philosophical teachings, and the psychology department kind of butting heads. So there's 2 different studies. Neither of them are bad or good, but you can't force a specific reality. You are rooted in your own reality. You can't try to force the modern world to be like ancient Greece. You can try to conjure these gods, but you're going to walk with us at the end of the day. This all feels a little half-baked, so let me know your thoughts in the comments. I don't know. I loved the dark academia vibes in this book. It made me want to curate my mornings while reading this and dress up a little and drink some hot tea, stare at the wall. But I could have gone even darker. I wanted the ending to be a murder-suicide. I was really excited to read their demise. But, I guess their demise was these characters' endings and their lives not being what they craved or were trying to curate. Okay, wait. wait. How did I get through this whole entire video without talking about the icon, Miss Judy? Judy, icon, loved her. I like how she would just kind of like pop in. She would pop in and make me laugh. Richard was so judgmental of Judy because of her basicness or whatever, and that she reminded him of home. But it's interesting how he would always want something from her or need something from her or use her for something. And it's like, you can try to push home away as much as you want, but you're still going to crave it in your life, whether that be literally your family and home or someone who reminds you of it. But I mean, he must have hated his family if he had the option to go home to California and decided to stay in those brutal conditions over that winter break. Reading that made me feel cold. If I walked in and it was like a dirty workshop with a hole in the ceiling where snow was falling through, I don't care how much I hated my family. Love my family, but I don't care how much I would have hated my family. I would be flying home to California. If there was an option, it seems like it was an option in the book. So damn, he really hated his family. He really hated his roots. And I guess that could also tie into him really clinging on to this clique of people who seemed so interesting and elite and following them all the way through murder because he saw them as a way to escape his life. Turns out they couldn't really help him with that either. Earlier today, I asked Megan and Liz to give me like a short and sweet text about what they loved in The Secret History. And I'm going to read those for you now. Megan says, in a classical studies class I took, a phrase we always seemed to come back to was real people, bad decisions, terrible results, which I think pretty much sums up this book. This book is a character study, in my opinion. Yes. The unreliable narration puts you in some flurried mindset Richard seems to be in throughout the whole book. It allows you to develop relationships with these characters, and your feelings about them are constantly changing. Characters that you look at as powerful gods and goddesses fall apart and become human before your eyes. Facts. Wait, I love that you said that you look at as powerful gods and goddesses. They didn't want to just walk with these ancient gods. They wanted to be a god. Liz says, I grew emotionally attached to the characters in this book and felt like a member of their group. I loved how this book exemplified the power of peer pressure, that part, and the feeling of belongingness that drives people to bend their morals to extremes. Every character's story was dynamic and often left me constantly revolving who I was loving and hating the most throughout the book. Will be reading again. Like, I did not like Henry at first, but then he kind of became my favorite character. And at first, I thought I was going to like Bunny, and then he was a horrible monster. And then I was like, the twins, oh, Charles is so sweet. Charles is not sweet, okay? He has his demons. So I agree. I loved the flip-flopping on feelings about these characters. I also would like to read it again. I think it'd be super interesting knowing everything to read it again and kind of see it from that perspective. It'll be a moment before I pick this book up again. It just took me so long to read, but for some reason it felt like 1,000 pages and I still loved it. I give this book 4 stars, by the way. So yeah, I don't know. It was a long journey and I enjoyed the ride. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon. And let me know if you've read The Secret History and what your thoughts are. Okay, bye.